Good afternoon, YouTube. This is Central Oregon Survival Network coming at you again. Today we're going to do the first video of the survival knife review process. This is going to be one of 8 videos on this particular knife. We're going to start with the SOA by United Cutlery, and I know that it's a cheap knife, and I picked it because it was a cheap knife. It's only $20 in most places you find it. And I wanted to see through the testing process on how this knife would hold up, and that's one of the reasons why I picked it. I didn't pick an expensive knife, not because I was scared of destroying it, but I wanted to pick a knife that we could test and really see how it's going to hold up and make the differences. Okay, so let's get started on this. Very first thing, first video is going to be on construction. That's going to cover the entire knife itself, not the sheath or any of the durability tests. So what we're going to look at first is we're going to look at blade material. Most knives have basically a brand on them. It could be etched of what kind of steel it is, and sometimes they have the hardness. I really think it's important when it states how hard the blade is, because you're going to need to know not only for maintaining it but for sharpening it. It's very important to me, maybe not to some of you out there, but that's important. So this actually only says that it's stainless steel. It doesn't give us what grade it is. That's okay, but like I said, I prefer it to state the actual grade. So I'm going to have to kind of mark down on that if possible, 1 point on just the actual blade itself, the blade material. So we're going to give it 0 for that. Moving on to one of the things that I researched quite a bit, and it's a big debate and an argument on this knife, well, not just on this knife, but on a survival knife altogether, is that, you know, a good rule of thumb, and I've read it on many blogs and a lot of different places, and my personal experience is an 1/8 inch or thicker on the spine is recommended for a survival knife, because you want it to be tough and you want it to withhold the different tasks that you're going to be out there doing. Now, this is an 1/8 inch, so it's a bit thicker than 1/8, so I'm going to have to give it 1 point for that. It also has a nice thick tip on it that's not going to bust on you, so I am going to give it 1 point. So that covers the blade. We're going to move to the size and the style. So on the actual size, it's 7 inches. That might be extreme for some people that do bushcraft. They like smaller knives, and you can do smaller tasks with those knives, and you can do some big tasks with smaller knives. But I prefer anything from 6 to 10 inches, and I've also read quite a few different resources on that. And 6 to 10 inches is a knife that you will be able to work with for large tasks and for small tasks. But one of the problems is when you get the blade too thick, become an issue, and now you can't do small tasks with it. So I'm going to give it 1 point because it does fall within that category of 6 to 10 inches, so I am going to give it a point for that. Now on style, this is kind of an interesting style. It does have a saw back on it. It has what I would consider kind of a spear point. Some people might classify it a little bit different than that, but I'm going to go spear point because it does have an edge on the top and an edge on the bottom, and it has a large belly on it. This actually would be really probably pretty good for skinning. It's got a nice belly, good edge on it, and you can get in there, got a nice tip to open the animal up and skin it back. So I'm gonna have to give it a 1 point for style of the blade, and that pretty much covers a blade. We're gonna move on to, is it full tang? Now this is a good question. It's really important to either have a full tang knife as a survival knife to hold up to the abuse that they go under, and you don't want it to break. Most typically, if it's not a full tang or a half tang, they'll come loose or they could even snap. So we're going to open this up and we're going to check this out. There actually is a screw on the bottom to open this blade up. Some people even carry Allen keys or ways to open or take their handles off so they can actually make a spear out of it in a survival situation. Okay, so you're going to find this kind of interesting. I have opened this up once before. I'm not going to consider this a half tang. I'm not going to consider it a tang at all. I'm going to see if you can see that. Basically what they did is they welded a bolt on the end of it and stuck it through the handle. So I think through testing we're going to find out how durable this really is going to be, and then maybe we can re-rank it. But as far as I'm concerned, that's not a full tang, and I'm sure you'll all agree with me. Okay, now to the next thing. We're going to talk about the handle or the grip on this. You know, you can talk about a lot of different, sometimes it's personal preference, what people like. There's so many different things out there, from, you know, carbon fiber to ABS to leather to titanium, stainless. There's just tons and tons of different things out there. I think one of the bottom in those categories is going to be plastic, which this actually is. This is a plastic handle. It is comfortable and it fits well in the hand. Retention is a big key to the grip. They've hexed it well, and it actually has a nice thick grip on it, and the hexing really works good for retention. But one of the issues is going to be it is plastic, and if you go out there and start beating on it and all of a sudden you lose your handle, now you're holding onto a bolt. So I'm not going to give it any points for the actual material used, but I am going to give it 1 point for retention because of the cross hatching. On to the lanyard, which is the last in the construction. The reason why I put the lanyard in there is because it's important not only for retention, well, mainly for retention, but you don't want it, some knives, their location of it isn't conducive to you know, where you're going to put the strength or retention. This is a good location, and one of the other things to look at is how big is the actual lanyard hole. You know, is it big enough to actually stick leather through there, 550 cord and so forth. This one actually is, and I'm gonna have to give it 1 point for that. So overall, on the construction of the knife, I think what we'll do, you know, 10 points possible. So I'm going to give it 6 points. We give it 1 for the overall thickness, 1 for the style, 1 for the size. I'm also going to give it 1 point for the grip, like I was talking about, retention, and 2 points for the lanyard hole. So we're going to give it 6 points out of 10, which is actually pretty good until we get it out there in the field and actually start testing it, and those will really reveal how tough this knife really is. Okay, hey, thank you. This is the SOA by United Cutlery. I know it's a cheap knife, but we're going to put it to the test and see what happens. All right, Central Oregon Survival Network, I thank you very much for your subscriptions and everything you do.